All right, it's time to get back to our server action to take care of some updates in our guest sentiment action creator here. So let's jump right into the video. So if we head back to the server action here, the guest sentiment, if we start the tab really quick, this is where we get the Reddit authentication token, where we fetch in the different posts to learn the sentiment about a particular stock. If we head down to here, after we're getting the token, we make a request to the stocks subreddit, and we're grabbing two matching posts that are include the stock that we're looking for, like Apple in the example here. Let's actually increase the limit here to 5 because for testing we were doing just 2. Let's increase it a little bit to 5 so we can grab 5 posts about that includes the Apple ticker. Then when we head down here, we're going to receive our response. We're going to grab the data and we're going to prepare the data so we can send it off to OpenAI. So here we kind of like give the structure that we want to the data so we can pass it to this promise.all, create our prompt and send it off to OpenAI to get the sentiment analysis. Then when we get it back, we do the structure that we want in order to return the post sentiment to the front end and display the content. So we're going to switch it up a bit because we have to continue and finish up the service. So the first thing I wanted to do here is to get rid of these two arrows here. So we have a red squiggly line here and one here. And this is because of TypeScript that doesn't know the type or the structure of the data. So let's take care of that and give our code more structure. And we're going to go into the types folder, open this up, and we're going to create a new type, and we're going to structure the data that we get back from the Reddit API. And right now we're just grabbing the title and the self text. So let's create one type here. Let's call it Reddit post. And the structure, we have a property data that has the title that is a type string, and the self text also type string. So this is the same spelling we're getting from the Reddit API, but there's a typo here, so that's why I want to keep it here, all lowercase. And now we can use this type back into the sentiment, so we can pass it in here for each one of the posts that we are going to look into the response. So let's go ahead and import our Reddit post type. And now let's scroll down here. Let's say that the subreddit data that we get back has a data that children, and each object in there is going to be of type Reddit post. So we know the structure. And I also want to set a type here because here we're returning a new object that we are using down here that we're mapping over those posts. So we're also getting a TypeScript error here. So let's go back to the types file and let's do export type. Let's call this one parse post. And this one is going to have just a title or type string, and the self-cavalcade text also type string. And now we can save the file and go back to the sentiment and say that this pose is going to be a parse pose array, and let's make sure we import the parse pose at the top. Excuse me. Let's go down here. That's fine. We got rid of those two TypeScript errors. Now we don't have that here. And here we have content. So since we have content here, that's fine. We can keep it like that. Why did I put type? Let me see, self text. Yeah, I put self text here, but we're using content, so that's my mistake. Let's go back to the parse pose. Instead of saying self text here, let's just use content. So we map, we create this object that's going to have the title of the pose and the content of the pose. And this is matching now. We should be able to now continue to the next step, which will be to update our prompt here, or double check our prompt. So in the prompt, we are mapping over this pose array, and we're making a request to the OpenAI completion API for each one of those posts. So now we have 5. We're going to make 5 requests for each one of the different posts that we have for the sentiment analysis. So we're going to send this prompt, and then we're going to wait for the completion, and we're going to get the sentiment back here. So here, let's revisit the prompt. Here we're saying your task is to analyze the sentiment of the following text and classify it as positive, negative, or neutral. You will be provided with a title and content. Analyze both the title and the content before analyzing the sentiment, or providing a sentiment. Providing the sentiment before analyzing the sentiment, that's fine. Then we can say, here's the data, the title, and the content. Do not add any extra information, just provide the sentiment. And then here's an example. Let's switch this line here really quick that we did previously, so we can say better provide only one word as the output. So positive, we want positive, negative, or neutral. All right, just updating that line is fine. So we got the prompt, we send the prompt into the completion API, we get the sentiment back, and we return an object with the pose and the sentiment added to the end. So we end up with this pose sentiment array, which is what we're returning now. But I want to do another step. I want to aggregate the amount of positive, negative, or neutral results that we got from the completion API, because we could increase that number here to search for like 5, 10, it doesn't matter how many you want to search for, and you want to like aggregate the results a little bit better. So in here, we're gonna go and say, let's say const sentiment count, and that is going to be an object which is going to have positive, set to 0, and then we're gonna have negative set to 0 and neutral also set to 0. Now for the counting the sentiment, we're gonna loop over the post sentiment array. So let's get rid of this return for now, because we're not going to return that anymore. We're gonna map over the array. So we're gonna do a for each, and we're just gonna count how many positives we have, how many negatives. So we're gonna grab each post, and we're gonna say if the post dot sentiment is equals to positive, we're going to increase the sentiment count dot positive plus equals 1. We're gonna say that if post sentiment is equals to negative, we're going to increase the dot negative, and then we can say else we want to increase the sentiment count dot neutral here by plus equals 1. Cool. So this is all good. That way we can look into how many positives we got, negative or neutrals, and we're gonna have our count inside of this object sentiment count. So after that, we're going to create another prompt so we can tell the model to kind of like create a summary of the overall sentiment. So we're gonna say const summary prompt. I'm gonna set that equals to backticks. And here we're gonna say based on the following sentiment. So based on the following sentiment counts from social media posts to give the model more context about the stock ticker, and then we're going to pass our stock ticker here. So ticker, not talker, ticker, comma, determine the main overall sentiment. And then here we're going to pass the positive, and we're going to say colon $, sentiment count dot positive post. We're going to copy that down twice, and we're going to say this is going to be for negative, this is going to be for neutral here. All right, and the last line we're going to add here, we're going to say only, you can say only response with positive, negative, or neutral again. So yeah, let's do that. Only respond with positive, negative, or neutral. Let's keep it there. That's our summary prompt. We can put a little space here. Based on the following sentiment counts from social media posts about the site ticker, pass a ticker, determine the main overall sentiment. Positive, positive, negative, negative, neutral, neutral. That's fine. That's exactly what we need. So now with this, we're going to make another request and we're going to wait for the model to give us back the overall sentiment. So let's create a variable called main sentiment. Sentiment completion is going to be our completion response. We're going to set that to await OpenAI dot chat dot completions, and then that create. Here we're going to pass our object. We're going to say that the model we want is going to be the same one we're using at the top. So GPT dash 40 dash mini, and then we're going to set the messages to an array, and then we're going to say row is going to be the user, and we're going to set the content to our summary prompt. And right now that's fine. We're gonna use that in a second. So get a main sentiment. Then we're gonna continue down here and we're gonna grab the actual result. So we're gonna say const main sentiment equals to main sentiment completion dot choices square bracket 0 dot message dot content, and then we're going to console log it just to verify the main sentiment, and we're going to say here main sentiment cool. And then we want to make sure in here that we do have a main sentiment return. So if we don't have one, if we don't have a main sentiment, so if something went wrong in getting our sentiment, we're gonna throw an error here. And we're gonna say error generating main sentiment. And the last thing we're gonna do here is to actually return the structure that we want. So here we're gonna say const sentiment, and then equals a object here. We're gonna pass the main sentiment, which is gonna be this, right? And then I also want to pass the post array or the post, and we want to pass at the, so this is the property name and post sentiment, post sentiment, post sentiment, post sentiment. That's the array, right? Yeah, that's the array we're creating here. So we're gonna have the main sentiment, we're gonna have the post, and then we're gonna have the sentiment count in case we want to display that as well in the front end. Let's add a type here because this is, we're gonna return this now. So return sentiment, and that's gonna be an object. So let's create a type for this sentiment here. So we go back here and we're gonna say export type equals, let's call this sentiment results. Whoops, sentiment results, and that is going to have a main sentiment property of type string. I want the post, and that is going to be an array of the parse post. We can use this type to say an array of the parse post. And then at the bottom, we're going to have the sentiment count, which is going to be, it's actually an object full of numbers. So let's create a type for that. So we have the structure completed. So export type sentiment count. So that equals to an object. We're gonna have the properties positive. So we're gonna be numbers. So number, and then we're gonna have negative, and we're also gonna have neutral here. So we're gonna send the sentiment count is of type sentiment count. Cool. All right, so we got sentiment count and sentiment result. So we bring that in here so we can add it to our data. So sentiment count and sentiment results. And then if we scroll down, we're using the sentiment count in here. And then, well, when we're returning here, we're returning a sentiment results. So that way, when we actually return this here and we use it in this page, we know the structure and we don't get an error or anything else. Cool. So this is basically completed. Let's just test that everything is working fine. Let's open those consoles here. Also go here. And let's refresh this. Okay, so right now I'm getting an error on the model type that I put. So because I made a typo, I put GPT-40 and it's GPT-0. Save that and refresh the page. Okay, we get in the pose main sentiment neutral. Okay, so right now we're getting the main sentiment neutral and we're getting a console log in the front end. So this console log here now is console logging this object here with the main sentiment neutral. We got the 5 posts that were fetched, and then we have the sentiment count. We got 5 neutral, 1 positive. So 5 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 positive. Okay, why is it getting 5 and 1? So let's see, depends on the date that you make this request. It might look a little different. So let me see why this one says 5. It's like counting 6. We'll double check on that. But right now we're getting the data. We're not getting any errors. We took care of the TypeScript errors. And let's see when we initialize the count. Well, the count is 0. So pose as sentiment in here. we're doing post as sentiment. If it's positive, negative, oh, sentiment else, sentiment that count. It could be that one of them is getting the wrong text, but we can double check on that a bit later. That's fine for now. We'll double check with the data because I want to confirm that right after we do some work in the front end. Sentiment count, positive, negative, and neutral, that's fine. So yeah, pretty much right now we have the same, all the structure. We completed the new prompt. If we refresh again, we're getting something undefined because this is from here. Line 11 is console logging right away, but we'll take care of that in the front end in a second. So basically we are good for now. Right now we're just getting neutral because it's the same request. We're getting the count, so I want to double check the count. So yeah, we're still getting like 5 and 1, and we're going to double check why is that right after we do some work in the front end. So let's go to the front end, and now we'll come back to the main to the back end, to our server action, to double check that all the data is being parsed correctly.